I've heard you say that people should be able to convert, and if they don't live in a Jewish community.
I said that the halakha doesn't require someone to live in a Jewish community to convert. Now, I understand how it's greatly beneficial to live in a Jewish
Sure,
community.
sure, sure. So I don't want to emphasize that point. I do want to emphasize though the point of being able to be a light unto the nation. And so for example, with Judaism as it is today, I mean, I can't speak for the past because I didn't live in the past. All I have are the writings. But I mean, I hear about so many things all the time, like, oh, how do you tie seed? Or kitniyot, is it okay? Is it not okay? Or what's your minhag? You have to choose the right minhag. Are you allowed to switch your minhag? What tefillah? What siddur? What all of these different things, which are things that are in my life. I enjoy them, but when you talk about being ethical or a light to the nation, like the idea that Mother Teresa was such a great person because she held dying babies in her arms. I don't really hear that emphasized a lot in Judaism,
right?
So much,
which is why I'm sticking with Christianity because it's more ethical.
Well, Mother Teresa was Catholic. Maybe you should become a Catholic.
I'll put that in there. Sorry, go ahead.
But I guess that's my question is why is that the case for one? And for two, I do want to big you up because I feel like you have made an impact, because I realized that when you were speaking to a couple of the most recent rabbis that you posted the videos on, it's like I'm hearing people, like, it's almost like people like you and yourself have made some type of dent in the Jewish world to say, like, maybe
how we do it, man. Preach, preacher, preach.
It's like maybe we do need to think about things a little bit differently. But I guess why hasn't it been emphasized? Can we chalk it all up to just like, this is what we were able to do, we weren't allowed to do much else, or what?
No, I think you're right with the last statement you said. Jews weren't allowed to proselytize, weren't really allowed to care about anyone but themselves. Now, I made a statement about the Lubavitcher Rebbe 2 days ago. This goes for virtually all these rabbis that they put on this pedestal. These guys never did anything for anyone who wasn't born Jewish, but that doesn't mean they didn't do any good. They did a lot of good for Jewish people. But the bar has been raised, especially since the advent of Christianity. It's not just about caring about your own people, because even monsters love their own children. The goal nowadays that so many walls have been brought down is to care about humanity. And you know what? That's what Abraham did. And Abraham is considered the father of our faith is because he argued with God to save the lives of people he never even met. He tells God, will you destroy this place if 10 people are righteous, if 20 people? He never met these people. He had no turtle in that race. And he still argued with God, and this is why God loved him. While we see someone like Noah, who didn't really give a crap about anyone but his own family. In other words, he did enough just to get by, and he was considered righteous in his generation. This is why people are judged in the generations they live in. So it's hard for me to meet people nowadays who in some way want to go back to the standard of Noah. But you know what? That ship has sailed. Ethically, we're head and shoulders above all those people. Now, Abraham, I think, set the standard, but people don't meet that standard nowadays. Right? I mean, it says Abraham made souls. Right? I mean, the whole notion of Ohel Avraham, the tent of Abraham, that he had a tent placed in a strategic spot in a barren land that people would be forced to go into his tent, bless God, and have something to eat. Right? This is the purpose of Israel. There's no coincidence that Israel is placed where it is nowadays because strategically it's the center of the world. God knew that people coming from Africa, going up to Mesopotamia, would have to cross that land, coming in from the Mediterranean and going west would have to cross that land, hear the message, be blessed, and in turn bless others around them. And that's what Rashi says. Rashi says that Eretz Canaan, that Canaan also means merchant, that it's a land that God was going to use to sell his philosophy to the world. Or then what's the point? I mean, is God a bigot too? All these people who teach that God teaches the Jewish people to just care about themselves, that's really a God unworthy of worship. I don't want to worship a God like that. However, if that's how your God looks to you, and that's who you're trying to emulate, well, I mean, it's not a coincidence that Jews do emulate that. They're insular and they're bigoted. But I think that's a new thing. And here I go again. I mean, I blame it on Kabbalah, because Kabbalah tells you to look inside yourself. Well, I think the initial message in Torah is to get over yourself, to look around at ultimately the nation, right? Because if we prosper and progress as a nation, the whole world prospers. It's an ultimate net gain, i.e. by them becoming part of that nation, even though they happen not to live in the borders of Israel. But go ahead.
Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
or I guess I could add to it. There's such extensive material on tefillah or the siddur. What are we, or what is the teachers going to give to the world whenever it comes time for them to ask, like, hey, how do we care for our wives, or how about this section of the Talmud that basically allows for this, but I don't want to live like that, like how what ethical things are there to teach, on like families, on children, on caring for the widow, the poor, charity, or where's the extensive literature or teaching on it?
I don't think the Torah is there to civilize prehistoric men. I think the Torah is there to make good people better. If you're a piece of crap coming into Torah, you're going to be a piece of crap with Torah. This is why the Torah itself, the 5 books of Moses, takes a less is more approach to the whole issue. It tells you to do right. It doesn't necessarily explain why it's right, but it seems that it expects you to use common sense. It tells you once and it wants it to compute. Like, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of the things that people have a problem with nowadays were very sensical 200 years ago. I mean, nowadays, everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel ethically because of affluence and boredom. They just want to change. And this is why the conservative approach, conservative with a small c, not a capital C, is to walk down the same paths that our fathers walked in. It says in Jeremiah, I believe. Look at the ancient paths because they had wisdom.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Come on, man. That's all the questions you had. I think you had, does God have feet?